Good evening and welcome back to ANN7 Prime. My name is Cindy Mabi. Today marks exactly 3 years since the passing of South Africa's soccer legend Senzo Meyiwa. Meyiwa was shot and killed in Vosloorus and Ekurhuleni during a robbery at the home of his then-girlfriend, singer Kelly Khumalo. Police Minister Fikile Mbalula will announce, visited Meyiwa's family in Durban and to give them an update on the progress police has made in the case. And no arrests have been made so far in connection with his death. Minister Mbalula assured South Africans that his department is working around the clock to ensure that those responsible for his death are brought to book. Meyiwa's death came at the prime of his career, shocking millions of soccer lovers in the country who still demand justice for his death. And the police have also come under fire for their alleged failure in handling the murder case of Senzo Meyiwa. In 2014, police made wrongful arrests and later released the man who was believed to have pulled the fatal trigger. And so far, no arrests have been made in connection with the soccer star murder. And soon after taking over the police portfolio, Minister Fikile Mbalula assured the Meyiwa family that police are working tirelessly in ensuring that the killers are brought to book. And according to a private investigator, Rick Crouch, police have no leads in the case. He referred the case as a cold case. And Senzo's fans have taken to social media to voice their concern over the lack of arrests in the case, and 3 years on. And on Twitter, one says that today marks 3 years since we lost Senzo Meyiwa, and still no killers are caught. They're walking amongst us, sad. And Ayanda Bianca says, in loving memory of Senzo Meyiwa, the Justice Department might have forgotten about you and failed your family, but we will never forget you. Begi Mbanjwa says, Senzo Meyiwa was killed on this day 3 years ago and no arrests are made, and we wonder why people have no faith in the police. Another tweet says, I don't understand why the police are dragging their feet when it comes to Senzo Meyiwa's case. It's been years and yet they were witnesses. And lastly, it's a damning indictment of our law enforcement agents at the nation, or as a nation, or as we commemorate the 3rd anniversary of Senzo Meyiwa's death today. And joining us in studio, Siyabulela Gentile, not in my name, SA Chief Executive Officer and co-founder. Mpho Kwinika is with the South African Policing Union as their president, and Carl Condon is with the DNK Management Consulting Services as a senior investigator, joining us on the phone line. Good evening to you and thanks for joining us. It's still It seems like just yesterday. I mean, you know, and very quickly after that, the arrests were made and there was some sense of hope that closure would be imminent. And yet we still sit with this case. In your view, Mr. Kwinika, how does this then restore faith and confidence in the police?
No, it does happen in this environment that matters such as this one remain unresolved until such time that there is new evidence which will then lead to the arrest of those people who have perpetuated this kind of a crime. So the issue of Meyiwa is just one issue of many issues which we have in our database of crimes which are not resolved.
But is it a lack of capacity, not having the necessary expertise in gathering forensics? We know that at some point police reenacted the scene and brought a high-level delegation to try and get to the bottom of it. And more interestingly, there were, over 5 other witnesses that were there, and yet still no arrests made.
It's saddening, to say the least, our police services, because this thing, we cannot pin it on Minister Mbalula. He only just came in now. But as my colleague here said, Uguti, this case is one of many. And unfortunately, I myself have once opened a case with the SAPS. And the only thing that they'll give you is a case number and probably say, Captain Mamman will deal with your case. And then that's it. They leave it just like that. So they really need to up their game. In fact, in my opinion, I would say this case in particular would assist them, Mbalula and his team, that the people can, at least they can try to restore their faith in the justice system. But if they're not doing anything about this one, then it's unfortunate. But one more thing, Cindy, no human being is above the other in South Africa. We are all equal. So the minister, he mentioned that he's going to treat this case as a priority. And in my opinion, he should do that with all the other cases, even those of people that we do not know. We've had, of course, experts coming out saying this is a cold case. In my opinion, it is a cold case. And not only it, all these other cases that are left unclosed, open, they are all cold cases, and it is up to him and his team to make sure that they fix the mess that the people of South Africa find themselves in.
All right, Carl Condon at D&K Management Consultants as the senior investigator. Good evening to you, Mr. Condon, and thank you so much for your time. What are the chances of, especially what analysts have called a cold case, being solved, and especially the preservation of evidence? What are some of the complications that make this so difficult to crack?
I think, first of all, good evening, and good evening to your viewers and your other guests. I think the important thing to point out here, which has been quite rightly reiterated by your guest, is that this is not an uncommon scenario. By and large, for the most part, cases are not getting solved in this country. Our police force is not necessarily grossly understaffed, but grossly underskilled. And I think what we're finding is that when we start looking at cases that run cold in terms of the leads that needed to be followed up within their golden period of 48 hours, as we refer to it, that wasn't necessarily done. There was a quick arrest made, which turned out at the end of the day to the police minister now facing a 10 million rand lawsuit. So, and every each day that goes by, unfortunately, the chance of a successful prosecution is just getting less and less. And I think that comes down to various things. The lack of evidence, the lack of leads found on the crime scene, the lack of crime scene management, and ultimately, I think also the lack of key witnesses or people willing to come forward and speak.
And that's the police, we always talk about crime being a societal problem, that if we all pull together, we have a greater chance of getting rid, or at least making our neighborhoods safer. But the criticism tends to come back to the police in regards to lack of processes or contamination of the scene, basic arbitrary mistakes that should not happen.
Can I come in there quickly? It's incompetence, to say the least. It's incompetence because, particularly with this case of Senzo Meyiwa, some people are saying, some experts are actually saying, what's this guy's name? Crouch, he's saying that there were many people there on the crime scene. It's unprofessional. How do they do that? I mean, you can't have an incident, you have over 5 people collecting evidence there. Not all of them are going to be running with the case. So it's lack of professionalism from their side, because the case was compromised from the word go, because a lot of people had their hands on these things. And unfortunately, in a country as corrupt as ours, you'll never know who was there, who was not supposed to be there. There are people that might have fiddled with evidence for what reason, nobody knows. So our policing system, continuously, it's failing the people of South Africa. And it's one of the things that we are advocating for as Not In My Name South Africa, to say that the government must prioritize the citizens of this country. That is why now you have allegations such as that the Russians come here and do as they please, the Grace Mugabes come here and do as they please. It's because in this country, we are not prioritized as ordinary citizens. So they must take this case and deal with it as soon as possible.
Mr. Gentile, hold the thought. Andres in Soweto, good evening to you, and thanks for calling.
Yes, how are you, ma'am?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm following this Meyiwa's case because we lost our brother 17 years back by the same thing. My brother was shot in 2000, and then the police dragged their feet. I went there, and last time they told me that the case is closed. I went there to complain. I went to the provincial office in Braamfontein for the case to be re-investigated. I still remember the guy who re-investigated the case saying that they lost the original docket. It is 17 years now. And then went to Rosebank, where he stays patient, to ask them which cases they give preferences. Because according to me, they don't put a preference on their own. I asked them, what is the difference between Meyiwa and then my brother? Because my brother was one of their own.
My goodness, Andres, thank you so much for sharing. Please stay listening. Hopefully we'll give you some guidance where you can escalate this particular matter. If a police officer, you die in the line of duty, and 17 years later, that case is even called, it's very cold comfort for the rest of us in thinking that your case would be prioritized. No, in KwaZulu-Natal, hello to you.
Hello, Nenjani.
Siyaphila sinezwaneni.
Yeah, ngilukhuluma noNono ngiseKlarosa wakasongwane.
Yebo.
Angazi ukuthi yes, uMinister Maphoyisa ngenze njani. Si-affectekile nje e-KZN. Ufike uhambe uyoreport i-case kuthiwa ireportile, uthola i-case number, ababuyi ngisho ukubuya kwena. Khona umuntu bathi bazothumela abaseshi. Awutholi ngisho yedwa ukuseshi. Ususaba ngisho uyoreport emaphoyiseni. Kuyabulawana ngalana ureporte ngisho ama-drugs agcwele all over kodwa akekho nje obuya kwena uzobalayele ngisho umuzi ukuthi naba la bekhona angazi uMinister ngenze njani.
Sithembe nje nokuthi ubukele naye uMinister and uzayenza ukuthi especially la ekhaya la emzini lana ikhona at least izinga lodlame luwehle sisinono. Siyabonga kakhulu ukuthi usithinte. Ndumisel, good evening to you.
Ninjani sisi?
Siyaphila sinezwaneni.
Hayi siyaphila nathi manje. Ma ngiyaluza udaba la Senzo Meyiwa la lona alusiseki kahle ngoba nobaba ubiza umkhulewo nje kusuka namhlanje kuze kube ikusasa khona lapha kwakhe. Malana nokuthi mhlambe usesola yena uNkulunkulu uthi akayikasingathe umndeni uke uvula indlela kucaca ukuthi amaphoyisa ngaba yathola nosizo lokuthi abophe abantu abenza obubi kuyena emndenini.
Sinxese baba siyabonga ukuthi usithinte. Mr. Gwinita, I mean the calls that are coming in, a sense of desperation, really trying to reach out and say, I've done my bit. Yes, I've been violated in one way or another, I lost a loved one, but I just want closure, which is what a basic human right that we have. And this is not coming forth.
Yeah. You see, I think we need not use the Senzo Meyiwa's case, to weigh in on the incapacity of the police. I think what has happened there, the way they started with it, it was wrong. Because they even went on to say that they've got their man. And that created a certain perception that the police have got a suspect in the case of Senzo Meyiwa. Hence the public is responding the way they are. But having said this, Cindy, it does happen that police don't get the leads to prosecute people that are perpetuating or the perpetuators of certain crimes. Another thing that I need to say to South Africans tonight is that if they don't make an input in policing and become interested parties, provide information so that the police are able to prosecute, these will remain cold cases like the people are saying.
Yeah, but this is not weighing in for the sake thereof. I think it's also highlighting the high levels of crime. And if there are any incompetencies or areas, pockets of weakness, let's talk about it. And hopefully that, the police, those that are supposed to keep guard, are well capacitated to do their job.
Yeah, but I can say this. We have been saying as the union that you need to establish units which will deal with specific crimes. The issue of murder is a specific crime. You cannot have serious offenses such as this one being handled through a task team. Every time when there is a serious murder, including political murders that are taking place in KZN, the police establishes a task team to go and investigate those crimes. You go down and find a hobo that is being killed and shot at underneath the bridge. The treatment is different from the one of the politicians. We need to really practice the issue of equality before the law. And by so saying, I should not be construed from trying to protect the police officials who are not doing their job. Those that are doing their job, let's give them a pat behind their backs. Those who are not doing their work, we should also do the same by criticizing them.
No, point well taken. Kyle Condon is still with us. Just in terms of the what is been termed public-private partnerships and this whole I suppose, engagement that is always encouraged between a public sector and government, and especially in the police culture. Are there opportunities where you do render your services to boost their capacity?
Absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, because of the reputation and the stigma that has been attached to the South African Police Service for probably over the last 15 to 20 years, companies like ours have almost grown to a point where, we're replacing them. Citizens are turning to private investigation agencies, private companies like ours to assist. Now, we're not out there to do the police's job, but what we are out there to do is deliver a service. And if we're delivering that service, albeit we're doing it for a fee, we're getting the results that the police aren't. And I think a lot of that has to do with police who've left the police force and have joined these private companies like ours. And we open the door all the time to any member or any government department, any police force, any metro police, to say to them, let's work together. Ironically, a lot of the private sector is better equipped to investigate crime than many of the police stations, many of the specialized units or so-called specialized units within the police force, which have almost gone redundant. So, you would think that of late there would be a better growth between private sector and or better relationship built between private sector and the police, because we certainly have a role to play. And as I said, policing is not just a community thing. It's every single person having a zero tolerance towards crime, no matter what it is. And if you've got that zero tolerance,
Mr. Kwinika wants to respond to that. Huh?
I think he's making a very good statement. A role that private investigation can do in trying to improve the issues of investigations of crime in our country. But we need to say it, that the responsibility of investigating crime rests with the police. That is the only institution in this country which has got, in terms of the law, investigate crime. The only time in a private prosecution will come in, it will be when the National Director of Public Prosecutions have declared that we are not going to prosecute on this matter. As a result, PI then will come in. Private investigations is allowed to run parallel investigations. But in between, there should be a good relationship, because as you are busy doing the investigations, the police may say that the crime scene has been trampled upon, witnesses have been threatened, all of those allegations may come to the fore. So there should be some sort of relationship. Yeah,
it's good and well that you can define what your job specs are, but in cases of families that feel they've been let down and the only other recourse is for them to go private, that's also their own prerogative.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying, to say that those who have got cash, those who have got money, they can do that. But the police must be, the institution must be strong enough to be able to unearth the missing link in prosecuting the people that are involved.
All right, let's go to the phone lines. Paul, you call, and King, we come to you, and Siso in the Eastern Cape. We start with Paul. Good evening to you. Hi, Paul.
Evening, lady.
What's your comment or question?
I want to comment concerning something there. I was a policeman. I discharged last year. I know the case of Senzo Meyiwa, what you are talking about. The gentleman there stated that the scene was compromised from the start. He's right. I know about it. I even spoke to the brigadier who was investigating the scene. I told him that he won't come all right with that case, but you know, if you have got a lower rank in the police, they don't even check your case.
Yeah, but don't you have, Paul, sorry to interrupt you, don't you have an obligation then to the information that you have in assisting what now has been called a cold case? Yours could just be that particular link that is required.
Let me tell you now, I'm busy with my private investigator. I'm a PI now. Through my PI, I have received a lot of evidence. Not only that one of Senzo Meyiwa case only, even the Colonel Malulek, who was killed in Prefontaine. I have that information. But I won't give it to somebody unless if I can meet the minister, Balula himself. And that one of Senzo Meyiwa, I'm telling you, they can't give me the case because I'm a PI. But if I can really said to the police, I can break it within two weeks. Because I know where was the problem.
All right, Paul, just stay on the line and give our producers your details. We'd like to get more information, but we have other callers to consider. King in Joburg, good evening to you.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm very well. Actually, on behalf of Senzo Meyiwa, we like this guy very much, more than what you can say, but whenever can have a good look in SA in terms of the law is there. We're not denying that the law is there, but actually, I think there is a big problem when it comes to investigation department. There is no enough investigation in this country. Whenever a case happens, like this brother says, when you go to the police station, open a case, they will just give you a case number and then you're gone, done with your file, and then they close the file.
Yeah, King, in the interest of time, I'll have to move on, my brother. Thanks indeed for calling. Swasiso in the Eastern Cape, good evening to you.
Evening, ma'am. I just want now to refer to Mr. Meyiwa's case, or may his soul rest in peace. One thing that I would like to I don't know whether you know the place under Eastern Cape, Joe Slovo, at Tofilvaba.
Yes.
Tofilvaba, yes. It's one place with high risk, crime risk. If the minister can visit our place, we'll be glad, Mama. We'll be glad.
Yeah, but just we're out of time, but I get that just, I mean, it resonates or it echoes many of the sentiments that our callers have made. Very briefly, Mr. Condon, as we've heard from Paul, who's our private investigator, holding on to evidence until he has access to the minister, is that the role of the private investigation to essentially give your evidence to the highest bidder?
No, I think it's unethical. I also I have serious concerns in terms of the legal aspect of doing that. It seems to me that that particular caller is going out and making huge claims, which he would know as an ex-policeman is against the law to withhold information if you've got it, no matter what your sort of reasonings behind it. You are bound as a citizen of this country, forget the private investigator aspect, to supply the relevant information to bring criminals to book as a member of the country. So what he's saying there actually appalls me. I think, I hear he's saying he won't give it to a low-ranking policeman, but there's no reason he could have not gone through the correct channels if he is holding on to information like he says he is. So that is certainly not the way that a professional organization or professional private investigator would conduct business. We pass on all our information to the correct police and those that we forged relationships with, that we can trust, and that's the way it should be.
All right, Mr. Condon, thanks indeed. That's Carl Condon, D&K Management Consultants, a senior investigator. Mr. Gentile, I mean, if high-profile cases can be left or neglected, and what does that then make for people, faceless, nameless individuals that may not have access to this kind of scrutiny or even have the platform to voice their frustration?
It's even worse. That's why people will tell you now, we'll go there and find these people who did 1, 2, 3 ourselves. People have lost faith completely in our police system. And I want to say that at the core of this whole issue, it's corruption. Because now we've got people who don't want to report cases, either who don't want to be witnesses, whether it's anonymously, because they are compromised, they're intimidated because of corruption. You know, I go there and say, I saw what happened there, the next thing I disappear. It is happening, and it's things that we need to talk about in South Africa. We are being governed by a brown envelope there in the police stations. We deal with these cases almost every day. In Hammanskraal, there's a lady there, but it's a case of rape. there's a witness, but now the witness is intimidated by the guy in prison. He's telling that lady, the family of that lady, that when I go out of this place, I'm going to deal with you. And that is the problem. It's corruption, because the police officers, the investigators, they're accepting bribe. That is our main problem in South Africa. Once the minister can clean his office and make sure that they get rid of all the corruption that is inside, then we'll be going somewhere.
Yeah, just Mr. Kunika, and again, we need to reiterate that there are fine policemen and women who dedicate their lives to their duties, but the general perception seems to be that there is complete decay of any morality there.
It is what we say and do. But honestly speaking, there are other people who can tell a different story from the one we are hearing now here. But to input positively to this is that the minister have said it in Parliament, that is going to reintroduce the serious and violence crime unit. That is it's a good step forward, making sure that South Africans as a whole are going to get the best out of the police. We also need to make sure that the resources which they need, issues such as the forensic, ballistic and all those departments, function fully and give support to the police so that they are able to do their work. The issue of corruption, I don't know, in Senzo Meyiwa's case, how does it play out in Senzo Meyiwa's case? Because in Senzo Meyiwa's case, we need evidence which will lead to the arrest of the suspect. And that suspect that is arrested must be linked legally with the crime scene.
Yeah, because somebody out there knows what happened. So we rely on community members or those that have useful information to please come forward. And again, thank you so much for sharing your stories. We appreciate, as painful as it is, that your contribution will hopefully also encourage others to act and also report crime. We'll take a break and take a look at the latest weather update. Do stay with us.